What is going on, my fellow knowledge seekers? I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy days to come and check this out. I'm actually doing this. I do it all for you guys. I do it for me. I do it to build my brand. I do it to share knowledge with you guys, whether it's about sports, mental health, fitness, whatever. But this one actually is one of the most out there ones. I've shared about my sobriety, which is out there, but this one I'm really taking a risk. I am going to give fantasy baseball advice and send it to a few league members who I am betting money in a league with. So old me would have been like, screw you guys. I'm hoarding this information for myself. I'm going to send it after the draft. But you know what? I'm not going to give it to people who've done league for a few years. But some of the new members, my guy C Pridge, Caleb, he's done this before. He doesn't really need it, but he's a little out of it. So I'll throw him some players. My guy Sasha, Troy, who I appreciate, Colby Long sent him my way. He's been the chillest dude. There's been some drama setting up this league. He's been the chillest guy out there. He deserves it. And then Lance, you got stuck with the least of the good teams, so I want to hook you up with some knowledge. So I know that people aren't as familiar with baseball because it's not as fun as fantasy football, but I just want to go out there and say one thing you can remember is it's pretty similar. So we all know who the best players are. Everyone's getting a good player in the first and third rounds. So it's really about finding value in the late rounds or finding value to replace value. So for instance, I was a college pitcher. I know a lot about pitchers. So instead of taking Jarrett Cole, I'm going to find other fireballers later. So it's all about using your knowledge, using what's available, and doing the best. It's like VORP. I was talking to Caleb last night. In fantasy football, who's going to score more points? DJ Moore or another similar wide receiver too, or Darren Waller? Darren Waller is going to score less points, but he's more valuable because the drop off between DJ Moore, if he's wide receiver 17, the drop off between him and wide receiver 29 is not nearly as big as the drop off between Waller, tight end number 3, and even tight end number 7. So it's all about finding those areas where you can find value. So first and foremost, I want to say that all drafts, whether it's baseball, football, or basketball, should be what's called an auction league, salary cap. So instead of just I get pick 1, I get pick 10, which works in baseball and football, but in basketball, it's the worst. So this year in basketball, I got the 10th pick, and I got LeBron James and James Harden. That sounds cool, but it's 2023, not 2019. They were dinged up for a lot of the year, and the first 5 players in the drafts had astronomically more value than them. If you got Luka, who I wanted, or Giannis, or Embiid, or triple-double machine Joker, you're making the playoffs, unless you're Sasha and you screw it all up. But your team is just that much more valuable. So the way we're in year 3 now of a Dynasty Baseball League, and it started with an auction draft. So my friend Oliver, whose team has unfortunately been replaced, is really smart. He went ham on 3 top dudes. He got Tatis, Acuna, 2 of the top 5 players, bid top dollar on them. And then Baby Vlad 3 years ago was seen as a fringe prospect who's supposed to be pretty good, but he bid extra because our friend Robbie, I told him Vlad was good. He kept bidding up on Oliver. I was like, hey, if Oliver wants him, get him. So Oliver ended up with those 3, ended up being 3 like top. What's Vladdy rated now? He's rated 8th in Yahoo Fantasy this year. And as far as Dynasty, he's 7th. So Oliver ended up with 3 of the top 7 Dynasty players. And then as just a prospect, went out and added Julio Rodriguez. So he has 4 of the top 7 Dynasty players. Absolutely crazy. So being top heavy like that then allows you to take risks in other parts of the roster. It also, main reason I like salary cap is you get your guys. As you can see, I'm a Yankees fan. It's not possible for me to get this year. I'll give a better example, the Padres. If you're a Padres fan, you can't get Soto, Tatis, and Machado. It's just not possible. So I believe all drafts should be salary cap, so you get who you want. Also, our draft is a redraft, so I won the league the last 2 years, which means in the redraft, I get the last pick. I believe this should be an auction draft. So if we were to make an auction draft, instead of me having a standard $260, we could just give me a lesser amount. Like first place gets 50 fake dollars less, everyone gets less, so it's slated. So you still give an advantage to the last place team. And that way you're able to get your guys. So for instance, we only kept X amount of players. I had to drop Justin Verlander. You can't keep Verlander because he's old in a dynasty league, but I really wanted Verlander. So I think it should be like a salary cap so I can bid high on Verlander, whereas I have the 10th pick and he's not necessarily a good pick. There's going to be some really good players available, so I won't want to get Verlander then. But by the time it gets back to me, when you pick first or last, you get 20 picks in between. So it's quite possible I'm going to miss my guy Verlander. Anyways, let's get to it. draft strategy, really important, as I said, with VORP. So we'll start position by position. My team was really, really good. As I said, I had tons of dudes. I have 4 studs like Oliver did. I have Soto, Judge, Harper, Jordan Alvarez. I had Rafi Devers as well. I traded Rafi Devers for Spencer Strider because I didn't have a top ace pitcher. And so I value, having the top big hitters and then not pitchers as much because I believe I can find them, but I did need one ace. So I traded Devers and Rodon for Strider because I wasn't going to be able to keep Rodon, which then allowed me to have an extra 6th spot available. And most people would have gone Alek Manoah or like rookie sensation Gunnar Henderson. But Henderson's been really bad this spring. I don't really think spring training matters all that much for veterans. But if you're a pitcher who's got increased velocity or decreased velocity, that matters. Last year, Walker Buehler had decreased velocity, and he leads to arm injuries. So increased velocity could be increased strikeouts. Decreased velocity could potentially lead to an injury. And again, if Jordan Alvarez has a hurt hand and he's struggling this spring, couldn't care less. Give him a month, he'll be fine. Gunnar Henderson did well in the spring last year, or in his brief time up last year, and everyone's like, oh, top 27 player in Dynasty. And then he's hitting like 160 this spring. Corbin Carroll on the flip side, who I hooked you up with, Sasha, you're welcome, had an 860 OPS last year. He's one of the top 5 fastest players in baseball. And this spring he has, as of a couple days ago, he had the 2nd highest OPS. So again, it doesn't mean he's a superstar, but it shows he's acclimated. So I don't think he's going to have a top 5 OPS this year by any means, but that 860 OPS he had is very obtainable. So, take spring with a grain of salt, but it is more important for certain players. So again, back to it. What I was saying so instead of keeping Alek Manoah or Gunnar Henderson, I kept Will Smith because Will Smith is one of the top hitting catchers. Adley Rutschman's very good as well and younger, but he doesn't have the power. And again, this is an OPS league. Salvador Perez had that crazy season in 2021 with the 46 home runs, but he dropped off in 2022. Again, if it's up to me, I take a catcher. Will Smith is clearly the guy for me. Let's even see what Dynasty rankings say for a catcher. I think they have him at 2 behind Adley. But for me, Will Smith has shown he can hit, and more importantly, he's on the Dodgers. So yeah, they have Adley at 1 and Will Smith at 2. And they incorrectly have Dalton Varsho at 3 because he could easily lose catcher eligibility. He's now an outfielder on the Blue Jays. So that is hilarious. So you'd be for a real surprise if you think he's going to be your catcher 5 years from now. He's an outfielder, and he's actually a terrific outfielder. He's got really, really good defense. So anyways, I kept Will Smith over those other studs because he's harder to replace. Also, Trey Turner was jettisoned to the Phillies, which means Will Smith is now hitting 3rd on that potent Dodgers lineup. So it's all about knowing where you can find value. If you are a college catcher and you're like, oh, I knew all along Sean Murphy was going to be good, and you can identify that next catcher, then by all means, don't overpay for a catcher. But I always overpay for catchers and tight ends because I don't want to be struggling to find a catcher or tight end. So moving up the diamond, first base traditionally has been filled with tons and tons of power hitters. The last couple of years, it's actually been kind of a wasteland, and it's been tough to find people consistently hitting. And I believe that's because MLB is valuing defense more. And so if you're more of a defensive-minded player, you're more likely to be like a Freddie Freeman type who is kind of lean like myself and is able to move quicker and field better, as opposed to like the slugging Ryan Howards. So also with the shifts they had in the past, they implemented that, and that really hurt the ability of a Ryan Howard to do well. So that's another thing to take in account. These lefty pull hitters could do a lot better this year, but it also could be more in the second half of the year. They could be adjusting because they learned to hit against the shift, and now they're going to go back in their pull happy ways. So it could be an adjustment period, but those pull happy hitters could be a really good investment towards the later half of the year. Anyways, I do believe with the value on defense, first base is still going to be a tougher one to find, but there are some values to be found. As I said, with Salvador Perez had that crazy 2021. So did Joey Votto. He fell off last year. He's 36 years old. He might not be good, but he's going around like pick 200. So first base is usually pretty easy. You can look at the dude like, oh, is 6'4", 230? If so, he can drop bombs. So that might be an easier one for you to find someone late. But take a look at the first base rankings. Find some people that you trust. Ty France isn't going to drop bombs, but the Seattle lineup is Julio Rodriguez, Colton Wong, and then Ty France. He's got 2 base stealers in front of him. Even if he hits a single or double, he could be getting some RBIs. So you could find your home runs elsewhere, maybe like second base, get a Gleyber Torres. So I used to always go for catchers, second base, and shortstops because there weren't many who could hit. But as they're valuing defense, they're putting more premier athletes. Like instead of maybe a center fielder, they're putting him at shortstop. Both the Upton brothers came up as shortstops and they put him in the outfield because they viewed that as the place where you put the premier athlete. Now, if the Upton brothers had come up, they probably would have stayed as a shortstop. So there's a lot more dynamic shortstops. So it's actually a position I'm forgoing and just going to find one later. There's like, you can get like, usually he's a keeper in our league, but you can get Xander Bogaerts in like round 9 sometimes. So shortstop's an easy position to find. Second base is easier than it was in the past. People like Gleyber drop bombs, and then they're faster guys. So like Tommy Edman is not a player I would have liked in the past when steals were more available, but he hit like 12 home runs and had 30 steals last year. A combined 42 swipes and home runs averaged out to a 2020 season. 2020 season is an all-star. And so with steals on the decline, someone like Edman is really valuable. That being said, with the pitch count this year, steals should be on the uptick. Pitchers can't just sit there and freeze forever. So if they're going to have to focus on pitching more, they're going to focus less on holding runners on. So that won't impact people like a Randy Arozarena that much, who's already taken off every base. But if you got a guy like a Freddie Freeman, Brian Reynolds in Pittsburgh, who's like a nice athletic dude, but isn't like twitchy fast, people like that, Christian Yelich, I think are going to steal a lot more bases. So this could be Kyle Tucker, who, by the way, they have as a 6th ranked player in Dynasty. I've never been a Kyle Tucker guy. I just don't see it. I'm sorry, Kyle Tucker. I wouldn't take you over any of those dudes. I wouldn't take you over Soto or Jordan. I just couldn't do it. But people like Kyle Tucker are going to get some more steals this year, so keep that in mind. You don't necessarily, in the past, to get a good amount of steals, you had to get a top base stealer, but you might be able to get someone like a Kyle Tucker. And then another position, outfield, I've always said is one to wait for the end because there's 3 outfielders. It doesn't matter if it's left field, center, right. You just get any outfielder. So it's usually pretty easy to find outfielders, but for some reason, there just aren't as many dynamic outfielders as there have been in past years. So it just seems, I think it's because pitching is just, pitchers are throwing harder and people are striking out more. So there's not as many providers. But from what I've seen, there are a lot more second base and shortstops, decent amount of outfielders, and then the hot corner is also tough. There aren't as many good third basemen. So third baseman is a little more than first. But yeah, there's definitely some example of one is Chris Bryant in Colorado is a great option. I know he's taken in our league, but he's a former MVP. And then Alec Bohm, who actually they compared to Chris Bryant, 6'5", 218 pounds, not as much the home run hitter, but a gap-to-gap hitter. He's an 835 OPS this spring, so that's a really solid option. And of course, he's on that Philly lineup that's loaded with Trey Turner, Real Muto, Castellanos. Derek Hall actually is a solid hitter at first base for them. And, you know, he could be a good person. He had an 804 OPS last year, so that's pretty solid. Again, that mold of a big slugger. That's lefty, 6'4", 230. Kind of actually, that's the exact same size as Ryan Howard. So that's someone you could target. But it's, you know, third base is, there's some options at third base. If you look at Dynasty for third base, like you got Arenado, Gunnar Henderson, Manny Machado, Riley, Bobby Witt is great with all the steals, super dynamic. Alex Bregman, Josh Jung from Texas is a nice former first-round pick to target late. Cabrian Hayes has power, hasn't been there as much, but he's put on some weight this offseason, so he could really knock it up. Ty France has third base eligibility in some leagues, so there's definitely some people. But yeah, it's all about targeting the value, who to look for. Again, the pitchers who have gotten more velocity. And then one thing I don't know if I mentioned is people who have changed teams. So be sure to be aware of the Mariners, for instance. Jesse Winker is a really fun example. He was on the Reds, where it's absolutely easy to mash home runs. He was there in 2021. He hit all the home runs in the world. He goes to the Mariners, has a horrible season, and is now playing back in Milwaukee. So Milwaukee's not as good as the Reds, but you could see a resurgent season from Jesse Winker, and then opens up spot in the outfield for Jared Kelenic, who's a top prospect. And then I am blanking on their other outfielder, but I remember thinking that, like, yeah, that's a guy that it's AJ Pollock, who's also a power speed combo they had for the Dodgers in the past. So I got to wrap it up. There's a crying baby I got to take care of. Let me see if there's any other quick hitters I wanted to say. I'll just go through some sleepers for you guys real quick. So catcher, Gabriel Moreno, he was on the Blue Jays. They decided that they were going to go other ways with their catcher situation. they have Alejandro Kirk, and they shipped out Gabriel Moreno. And so he's a solid person for the Diamondbacks. ADP is 255. He's a good one to target. Christian Betancourt was really good at one point for the A's. I told Sasha to pick him up. He got hot, absolutely fell apart, but he's with the Rays. A's and Rays are two of the best talent scouts in the league. So if you go from the A's to the Rays, that's probably a solid place. Joey Bart, of course, no explanation needed. Super top pick. First base, I already said Votto is a good one. Garrett Cooper for the Marlins is good. 6'5", 250, former pick by my Yankees. Decent power, decent barrel rate, decent plate discipline, solid guy. And then Carlos Santana. Aging veterans always get undervalued. He's got an amazing eye. If you're in an OPS or OBP league, Carlos Santana, ADP 443 on the Pirates. Again, teams like the Pirates and A's, you're not going to get your 110 RBIs, but you can still get someone with 25 home runs, 80 runs, and 80 RBIs at a discount. Second base, Nick Gordon for the Twins, ADP 280. Really good line drive rate, high exit velocity. Hasn't been able to translate into home runs in the past, but he's been one of those guys who's been using Driveline, which is a place where the people work on, changing their metrics, hitting the ball harder, getting more lift. So Nick Gordon is someone who could really increase his power. And there's two on the Cardinals, actually. Brendan Donovan and Nolan Gorman. Donovan, a similar one, trying to increase his power. He's got great plate discipline. He's a good contact hitter. If he gets a little more power, he could do a lot. And he's got eligibility every single infield position. So he's a good guy to have. And then Nolan Gorman, just a former top prospect. And again, the Cardinals are like the Astros. They like the Braves. They're some of the really good prospecting teams with more money. When someone is a prospect for the Cardinals, I tend to pay attention. He could suck, of course, but people like Nolan Gorman. And then, shortstop's pretty easy. I won't go into that too much. Ramon Urias at third base is a really good one for the Orioles. He's hitting right behind Gunnar Henderson, Ryan Mountcastle, Santander, Adley Rutschman, slotting in the sixth slot, ADP 450. Don't even need to know anything about the prospect. He's hitting behind a bunch of good dudes, and he's a prospect. And his ADP is 450. Heimer Calendario, same thing for the Nationals. Really solid player, solid hitter. Not great power, but if you're hitting at 450 and if your ADP is 450, this is a flyer, someone who's going to produce for you. And again, the Nationals need bodies. Eduardo Escobar for the Mets is a great hitter. He had an awful year last year, but he's got 25 home run potential power at pick 350. That's amazing. And then in the outfield, Austin Meadows, 6'4", 220, big, strong athlete, home run and speed potential. A really good guy to get late round for the Tigers. And the Tigers, one of those teams, they're not sexy, but they're going to give you some value. And then last one I'll give you with is Mike Yastrzemski. People totally forgot about him. He had a great year in 2021. I'm all about the 3-year average. People can have off years. Who knows? He could be dealing with injuries and play through them. People are often scared to tell coaches they're hurt. So Yaz could have been hurt last year. And just kidding, I did have one more. Max Kepler had some really unlucky BABIP last year, which is batting average on balls in play. He was getting unbelievably unlucky. So Max Kepler is one I would really go after. He's got that nice, smooth lefty swing, pull hitter, lots of natural power. Carlos Correa is back in the Twins this year. If Buxton's healthy, Kepler's there, and Nick Gordon's good. It could be Jose Miranda's a solid hitter. That could be a really good offense. Check it out. Max Kepler and the Twins. Thanks for listening, you guys. And if you made it this far, please like and subscribe. I don't know why I never say that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Good luck in your drafts, but I hope I still crush you.